the spending plan over many years, the fact that the proposed plan didn't start from scratch, and in fact, reflects, lifts up, and connects to many years of work in this county to define strategies that strengthen youth and families. More importantly, the motion gives us clear instruction on the work we still have to do. We still have to align the budget with our newly adopted strategies. The JJCC is a collaborative body, and as was the task force, but we did not always agree. We agreed that it would take time to shift from 17 years of doing business one way to a new way. We agreed on many positive initiatives to support in the new year, but we disagreed that we had sufficient time to fully understand and vote on the budget, and we disagreed that there were enough specifics on what it would take to transition to a more fully implemented plan that aligns with the strategy.
Thank you. If you'd like to turn, if you didn't get to all your testimony, you'd like to turn that in, we'd be very interested in reading it. Well, I can only speak for myself. I'd be very interested in reading it. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Green. I'm the Director of Criminal Justice Programs at the Urban Peace Institute, and I'm an appointed member of the JJCC representing the 3rd District. I'm also a member of the task force and the chair of the JJCC's Community Advisory Committee, which solicits input directly from community members. So I have some prepared remarks. What I'm going to try to do is incorporate those with just some clarity I think that's important around what we've heard already. The first piece is, before I was an appointed member, I was a community member showing up at the JJCC meetings, wondering why the comprehensive plan and the budget were so out of alignment with what the county itself and this board had exercised leadership around as youth arrests and incarceration were going down. That was 3 years ago, so this is not a new conversation around reallocating these funds. This is a 3-year-old conversation. The task force itself was formed in February of last year, so this is a 13-month-old task force, so this is not a new conversation in that regard either. I just also want to identify that this is a super complicated budgeting conversation, and this is exactly why we should rely on the JJCC to support the department. The history of the department is that there have been significant challenges, unspent funds, poorly aligned budget, a plan that wasn't amended for 15 years. Only since community members were appointed by this board did we move the ball forward, and so we should continue to rely on that body. There has been great community leadership, great community partnership with the department, and so we can't stop now. We actually have to shift the budget now. And I think there's a difference between saying it will take time and saying we're not going to shift it at all this year. We may not get all the way to alignment, but there is an opportunity to make some real progress here. The last thing I'll say is it's not just the Youth Diversion and Development Office that has this challenge. There's also challenges in getting money to the community-based organizations, the challenges around those organizations receiving referrals from the county agencies, and the fee-for-service contracts, which make it very difficult to sustain community-based organizations.
Thank you. Can I ask you just one question? How do you think it would take to further align probation's budget with JCC's guiding input?
Well, so just a point of clarification, the JJCC budget, it's not really probation's budget. It is presented by probation, but it's the entire council's budget. So what we have seen is there's a few large areas of spending on the intervention side that we also know that there have been shifts in programming. So for example, school-based probation officers, while a very important element of the plan, we know that those officers historically provided what has been referred to as Quick 236 voluntary probation, and that was ended by the department last year, which means that they shouldn't need the funds that was previously allocated to them.
You just have specific areas where you think...
There are, but I think, broad picture, broad strokes, there's an opportunity to invest in the prevention side, as folks have said, and move away from the intervention, because what we know is the numbers are reduced in the intervention side.
Okay, Supervisor Fuel.
Thank you. And Josh, thank you very much for your service. I thank all of the appointees, but of course, you're mine. Ms. Mitchell indicated that there was an attitude in the JJCC or the task force that there may not have been an expectation of all of these changes in this budget, and we're talking, I guess, the 18-19 budget or the 19-20 budget, which we have not begun yet. Could you clarify for me, if that is the case, which budget and what the discussion was?
So my understanding is that we're talking about the 19-20 budget, and that there is an acknowledgement that we won't get all the way to aligning with every dollar to what the plan that was adopted unanimously last Monday, but not that we wouldn't get anywhere. And so at the task force level where we had these conversations, we had to agree to disagree and acknowledge that we were going to have to take this to the JJCC, and that was the venue in which we would decide how far we could get, which is, I think, why this motion itself is so important, because it reinforces the work of the JJCC. So I don't think there's an expectation that we will get everywhere, but I think the reason that we expected we would get somewhere, and some significant progress would be made this year for the 1920 budget, is because last year there was a promise that there would be a mid-year revise of the budget to address this exact same concern that we raised a year ago, and that never happened in spite of pushing by the JJCC members and community members. So I think we raised that concern to set the stage for our belief that we needed to do more than just commit to future budgetary revisions. We needed to make progress this year.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So you're hopeful that we can get a little more alignment
Yes.
this year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I know he's yours, too. I had fun asking questions.
Good afternoon, Supervisors.
Yes.
My name is Marcus Castain. I'm also one of the community members of the JJCC. I've been following this for about 3 years. You obviously all are very well informed on this issue, and that's very encouraging to hear based on your comments and questions. We have made some progress, and the JJCC nearly unanimously, perhaps unanimously, adopted the plan, and that's progress. However, there was near universal disagreement on the budget, and that's why we're here today. And I think if we cut to the chase, like why is there this disagreement? I think we have to look at two numbers that are in that budget. One is $11.6 million for school-based probation officers at a time when probation's budget continues to go up, and their caseloads are half of what they used to be several years ago. As community groups, we don't understand that. And then we look at this huge amount of money that the county within probation continues to hold on to that we believe should be getting out. It's tremendously frustrating. The other number that's in there is $6 million for a technology project that we as JJCC members just learned about that does not seem very well defined or validated, and to me it just reeks of technology boondoggle, not something that's well conceived. And then I think the real bottom line message for me as somebody who's been following this and concerned about this issue is, how do we solve this, damn it, to paraphrase Supervisor Ridley Thomas?
Only he's allowed to say that.
Excuse me, I can quote him, right? Probation is not a grant-making organization. That's not what they were intended to be or to do, and they're not staffed, and they don't have the infrastructure to accomplish that. There are a lot of organizations in this town, some in government, like the Arts Commission, or on the city side, like BRID, that are effective at doing that. Probation has not been designed to do that, so I don't think we should expect that they're going to be able to figure out how to do this on their own. The public-private partnership is very encouraging. We could put a lot more money in there and ask them to align it with the goals that have been laid forward and put forward in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Yeah, whose are you? Yeah. Who owns you? Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Waldo Gonzalez, and I'm here representing Intercity Struggle, a community organization based in the east side of Los Angeles. For 25 years, our organization has worked with low-income immigrant and Latino youth and families to build their leadership to be a powerful voice for change in their schools and communities. We support the motion brought forth to empower the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council to align 2019-2020 Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act funds with the spending priorities and framework of the updated comprehensive multi-agency juvenile justice plan. The new spending plan created by the JJCC positively prioritized added funding to community-based youth development interventions, which could serve as a strategic service delivery before young people have contact with the juvenile justice system. We agree that more county resources should be allocated to support programs and services for youth that supports their healthy and holistic development. Lastly, ongoing community engagement is important, and we thank the Board of Supervisors for strengthening the JJCC to be youth and community centered. We stand ready to help and urge you to support the motion before you today. Thank you.
Thank you. He's here. Did you want to ask him anything while he's here?
No,
No, I wanted to ask a question. Do you offhand know how much funding has been made available to your organization in this arena from probation, if any?
I'm
Never
not,
received? No.
yeah, I'm not familiar with too much paperwork with the exact, no.
But you do receive something?
I'm not sure.
Not
I need to.
Okay,
Thank you.
that could be part of the problem. Thank you.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is David Turner. I'm the manager of the Brothers Son Sales Coalition. We are proud partners of Youth Justice Coalition and the LA Youth Uprising Coalition, and I'm happy to be speaking in front of you today. The BSS Coalition is proud to support the motion to empower the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council to align JSCPA funds with spending priorities produced in the Comprehensive Multi-Agency Juvenile Justice Plan. Dr. Martin Luther King reminds us that, quote, perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. Having worked in community-based organizations in the past, I can tell you that we are often starved for funding to really use these resources. Some organizations have had to cut funding, important programs, and even lay off key staff. As someone who is directly impacted by this, I can certainly tell you that we cannot wait. JJCC is more diverse and robust than ever, and because of that, I believe it is important that we support this particular body as well as community-based leadership. With that being said, Ryan, with regards to the reallocation of funds, there are existing structures in place that can be used to redistribute these funds. It already came up earlier that we had the public-private partnership with the Liberty Hill Foundation and California Community Foundation. We have the Office of Youth Diversion and Development. You know, we have the LA County's My Brother's Keeper initiative, right? We have these different initiatives, right, that can be avenues for this funding, right, and then can reallocate this funding to community-based resources. With this being said, right, you have the ability today to be on the right side of history and vote yes. With the yes vote, you're saying that you believe in community leadership, you believe in community accountability, and that you believe that we are worth the investment. Please vote yes on item 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. Okay. Yeah, I'm just up here for a minute. My name is Joshua Ham. I work with David Turner with the Brothers Son Sales Coalition and coordinator for the Brothers Son Sales. I guess I just want to talk about importance a little bit, and everyone's talking about funding and data and everything like that. I just want us to be real and very contextual when we up here and talking about resources where funds should be allocated. We all know that probation really doesn't work. I mean, I'm from the inner city, I'm from South Central Los Angeles, and I've seen a lot of these programs that have failed people that look like me and my other counterparts. Definitely been a part of a community organization. I started at the Liberty Community Strategy Center, and I further went on to Community Coalition. But help me become, I guess you can say, maybe a model citizen, or they just gave me access to things. They have supported me, they gave me stability. Of course, I was in a single-parent household. Of course, dad wasn't around, and mom's always worked a lot, and my brother was incarcerated for 12 years. This basically, my brother didn't have those support systems as well. And I feel like a lot of community organizations, or he would have been a part of when he would have had access and more mentorships in his lives to give him equal opportunity. You know, probation is definitely, you getting stuck. My brother was on probation, and any little thing you do, you've been pushed back into the prison system, back into the judicial system. So these systems have been filling out people for decades, centuries. So I think it's time to, like, you know, switch it up and change the momentum. Like, and just basically have a new model for what success and what community organizations can definitely do for people and people of color that look like me, and making sure that we have a fighting chance and have access to things and programs that we need. Like I said, I've been here several times before. We can always talk about budget, we can always talk about money, but where's the compassion, where's the love, and making sure that human beings, we support one another, and knowing that pushing somebody's baby into jail because they made a mistake is wrong, and keeping them in these programs because they made a mistake is wrong, and stuff follows them. So it's time for change. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's hard to follow.
Good
afternoon, Honorable Board. My name is Emily Blake, and I am here representing the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce as their Smart Justice Manager. We are here to support this motion. It's the board. It's the board that ultimately has oversight over the JJCPA plan and budget. So the board's motion is appropriate and very important. This is the first time that the JJCC has worked collaboratively to update the plan since the first plan was adopted in 2001. The JJCC is more diverse and should be entrusted to align the budget further with the plan. The Chamber and the business community support the new plan adopting a positive youth development framework based on research, data, and evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, good afternoon. I support this motion, but I am puzzled that it could be $79 million unspent, and when other non-profit are doing the work and not being paid. And we have the same issue with LASA. I think, we need to start really looking how the monies are spent when they are allocated, because it's totally unfair not to be able to produce. When we find out that inmates don't get any medication and so on, and something wrong in that picture. And we go through that almost every week, so please make it happen. Spend that money.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting me speak. My name is Herman Aviles. I'm the Alumni Director for Inside Out Writers. We're located in Hollywood. And I have 10 years of incarceration. Back in 2010, I was standing over here on this left-hand side, and when they used to have speaker cards. And I was addressing the board regarding AB 109, trying to get some of those services to us, because it was delegated to two agencies, one of them being the ones that we're talking about now, the sheriff and probation. We were the agencies that were out there on the ground trying to do stuff that we thought was, impactful. But unfortunately, we didn't get any of that money. But today, let's bring it up to 2019. Today you celebrated Flint Ridge Center. Flint Ridge Center was one of the agencies that was here asking for money that day. I'm part of Flint Ridge. I was part of Pasadena. The chief of police, he was a commander back there. Commander Perez was a big part of us keeping it together in Pasadena. Parole didn't want to do the PAC meetings anymore. We said, what are we going to do to make an impact in this community? It was Commander Perez, Deputy Chief Walls. We said, you know what? We're going to stick together. We're going to do this thing as a community. We're going to make it more community friendly. It's not going to be, run by the police. And you know what? And you celebrated that today. That's what's so ironic that I seen the chief here today. I went up to him because Jimmy was telling me, hey, go up there and say hello to him, and I did. He's always been, a big part of my life. So, you know what? Today we talked about Cesar Chavez. I think if Cesar Chavez were here today, he would advocate and tell me, you know what, Herman? You know what you're doing, the in-reach, with the stuff you're doing for reintegration and all that, continue to do that, brother. Continue to do that, because I support what you're doing. And I think down here at the ground level, the community needs to get off and do what we do best. And that is provide service. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And all these years, okay?
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Adriana Mendez. I'm representing the Coalition for Engaged Education. And I just want to highlight how the budget allocates $11 million to school-based probation supervision, and how it's inconsistent with the spending plan, which is prioritizing community-based prevention services, and how the focus should shift to allocating those funds to nonprofit orgs like ours, like Inside Out Writers, who can meet the students in their communities, meet the students in their schools, and provide the services that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Megan Best. I work at the Children's Defense Fund, but today I'm speaking in my capacity as a juvenile defense attorney. I recognize the value of the probation department, specifically in the responsible and caring probation officer assigned to my 17-year-old client. However, as valuable as he may be in his ability to connect my client with support programs, he should not be paid by JJCPA funds. Rather, JJCPA funds should be allocated to those organizations that provide the programming, from cognitive behavior therapy to music enrichment programs. These are the types of community-based youth development programs already in existence and described and uplifted in the new CMJJP. The budget should reflect these intended investments, and the JJCC can make this happen in the allotted time period. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Ale. I'm the statewide co-coordinator of Californians United for a Responsible Budget and the Justice LA Coalition. For the organizations that are now over 80 organizations that are part of our coalition, many of whom provide direct services to our community, organizations like the Youth Justice Coalition that provide effective youth services, they are finding it very difficult to acquire funding from the county because of all the red tape. Meanwhile, probation is monopolizing the funds that the county has. Like the previous gentleman talked about Prop 47 funding, like AB 109 funding, which goes disproportionately to the sheriffs and probations, while our community-based services are doing effective work on very little budget. And so when we think about the budget that you have in your hands right now, it's an imagined future. The fact that sheriffs and probation have so much money compared to our community-based services is because at one point a board, just much like this one, decided to invest in criminalizing our youth in probation, in sheriff, rather than building up the community-based support that can actually lead to recidivism, that can actually lead to breaking the cycles of incarceration for youth like myself, who grew up with incarcerated parents, that grew up in impoverished communities. If we're able to properly invest in our communities, we'll be more effective in providing the services that our communities need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Elisa Hernandez. I'm the LA Campaign Coordinator for Just Leadership USA. I want to say thank you for putting this motion together, but I think that, like someone mentioned earlier, we're at a really critical point where you can decide to move, like traditionally with the budgets you have been, as reflected by AB 109 or others, or you can do something different. And instead of funding the entrenchment of probation in our schools, we really need to build up this capacity in our community. In all the conversations that we've had with your offices and your staff, the question is to us. So identify the organizations that are capable of doing this work in the community. And we have the list of people, but they're doing it by their nails. They hardly have any funding, and for decades, most of the money has gone into building this infrastructure of law enforcement and incarceration. The same investment needs to be made in community-based organizations, and it's not going to happen one day to another. It's going to take time, but we need to do it right if we really are going to move away from decarceration, or if we're going to move away from not building a mental asylum in the central, in downtown LA. If we're going to really do those things and decarcerate, then we need to invest in community-based resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Lex Steplin. I'm the Director of Campaigns and Policy at Dignity and Power Now. There's clearly a theme here, and it's being articulated clearly. It's in plain sight, and I'm happy and honored to be able to reaffirm what we already know, which is that the paradigm shift away from long-standing and failed institutions into community-based solutions that are vetted and that work and that simply need a scaling up is seeming to be an answer. And oftentimes in this work we look for the answers, and it's exciting for an opportunity to reimagine systems and place resources where they can be utilized effectively. And it's especially luxurious when it's not complicated. And because it's not complicated, and because you have the assistance of a robust and informed, self-made infrastructure of advocacy and organizing to help you see your way to those solutions, it's even more complete. So let us help you to help us, to help our communities, and create a next generation of where people like us who had our parents locked up and now we have to come and clean up these messes, where those youth can instead in the future devote that energy and that creativity to creation rather than the dismantling of the systems that separated our families.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Anthony Robles. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition, and I would just say that since about 2007, probation's budget has increased by about $500 million, and it's gone over $1 billion. Probation gets over $1 billion to perform quote-unquote services in the community, while community-based organizations get pennies on the dollar compared to that. So the fact that any money from JJCPA funds is going to probation is ridiculous. 100% of JJCPA funds should be going to community-based organizations to provide youth development services as outlined in the new JJCC plan. And the JJCPA budget funds should align with the plan, and all of it should be going to youth development services in the community. Lastly, I would just say that there's an audit being worked on the state level, and if it goes through, several counties' JJCPA spending plans and where the funds have been going will be looked at. And if we align our JJCPA funds with the plan that we have now, the new plan that we have now, LA will be a model for the rest of the state, seeing that our money will be going to youth development services in the community, and it should be 100% of that. So we could be a model for the state and get a little pat on the back from Sacramento and get some more of that money from the state. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Supervisor Han and Mark Billy Thomas, for putting this motion forward. I am Ken Mendoza with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. I'm also a member of the JJCC committee, one of the at-large community members, and I'm in strong support of this motion. As a member that voted to approve the plan, the CMJJP plan, and oppose the budget. I feel like we really need to make sure that this budget does reflect the areas that really need to be addressed. I think it's been way too long, way too many years, way too many lives of youths who have been put into this system. And now some of these guys, unfortunately, are already grown men that haven't been grown up in the system, because there was never people like myself, people like the people that spoke, involved in this committee, or just being able to voice what we really understand to be the solution. I just really hope that we really reallocate this money where it really does belong. I reiterate Anthony Robles. 100% of this money needs to just go to community-based organizations. A lot of organizations are doing amazing work, and they're doing it with a small budget. Imagine how much more impact they will have, and how much more policy change, how much lives they can save, how much more savings can be saved from taxpayer money, how much more we can reform and create a better LA if we were to provide more funding to all these CBOs that literally are struggling every single day to pass something that is just right. So I think that it's already way too late to be talking about that. We should have been doing this, and it's about time that we do something, and the time is now, and let's be the model of the country. Let's end youth incarceration in LA County. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Juan Morales, and I am a member of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition and also a member of LA Youth Uprising Coalition. And I'd like to thank the board members, Han and Ridley Thomas, for introducing this motion. I'd like to start off by saying that the board has entrusted JJC with coming up with a plan, but it seems like the ball has been dropped to take this hypothetical plan into reality. And with that being said, I'd like to take something out of my lived experience and talk about something real to address the issue. And I'd like to just say that it's interesting that the translational application is caused an uprising in aerospace and computer science. I mention this because my lived experience as I continue to study biochemistry, opposed to a previous one with exposure to incarceration and while living in the inner city. I'd like to speak on diversification in resourceful institutions and the large effort that these institutions pursue it because of the lived experience people have that allows them to have this unique perspective. And so it also leads to novel ideas. And the board has a committee that is diversified. So I ask you here today to allow them to cause real change. And it's not just through the lived experience, but what they bring to the table is solid data. I will tie this to my experience in middle school and high school, where I had to pass the same math class 5 times, but I find it more strange that I couldn't get into an art or music class. And well, rejected school. And a decade later, I finally went back, and now I find myself at one of the greatest institutions in the world, after I was able to find some peace and stability in my life. And so, children need a safe space. Schools and communities don't always offer that. And, that speaks to the fact that what has been done isn't work. And, let's stop in earmarking ineffective strategy and develop new ones.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. It's Eric President from the 3rd District. And, this is heartbreaking, obviously. And I don't know if I believe that the $79 million is a real number. If it is, for the record, if a year we spend that money over the course of the next year, that would be $200,000 a day that we would be pushing out the door. So we might want to think about how we want to do that more carefully than just doing it immediately. But I do think that the going away from criminalizing youth and, informing ourselves with all the information we have about how to fight recidivism by these community-based organizations is the right answer. But in the interim, how can we get the auditor controller in some way to be recognized for all of his work? I have never seen a man who's done more than John Nagel. And I would like to call the county to have a day off in honor of John Nagel. And then, right after that, he would provide, at the $2,100 that I hope CEO MI will cover, the actual for what we did for George H.W. It's just inappropriate to have all this pontificating about financial accountability when we can't get a straight answer at the time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, I just really would like to commend these young Hispanic and African American young men. I'm from England as well. And I'd like to see, as per their advisement, the money to be reinvested in the community, not in maintenance or proliferation or creation of this police state under martial law, which encourages the recidivism of especially young Black and Latino youth, because it is an industry, prison industry, even at the juvenile level. Of course, the maintenance of the status quo, white supremacy, or this class system, which is very real in this republic. You can review a book which I read at UCLA when I was going to school at UCLA called Schooling in Capitalist America. Okay, it's so deeply rooted in this white supremacist system and the class system and maintenance. So you have to keep Black people, people of color, in crime, in the Department of Children and Family Services, foster care system, and most of those children, of course, stay in the system, either in prisons or in some other agencies where they are subjugated. And again, this just continues in that same cycle. Also, I'd like to expose how this new age technology is used to maintain this class system. The microchip, the uses of electronic weaponry, subliminal programming, and programming, hypnosis is used. Also, psychotropic medication being used. So that people don't know that they are being encouraged into the programs to commit crimes, as African and African Americans are more sensitive, and there are exposés of the subliminal mind control method used by the military and paramilitary, especially Black neighborhoods. I was one myself, and covering it up they cannot. I'm one survivor. So most people are not aware at the level that they are programmed subliminally to react or respond violently.
Thank you.
And the government is banking on this.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
So where's John? Where's John of NHSA? What did Ridley Thomas say about best practice? I'm an example of best practice. Because, see, I contend myself with the city attorney because we're both equal. I'm not the one stealing public funds through fees. I'm the one exercising my First Amendment and my practical right under the California article titled blah, blah, blah. See, I can't fill you with all the rules and regulations, but you can learn them. See, when I did my time, I didn't go, Mommy! I said, hey, 5 nights, ticket, bro. But then I got offended when this fool comes into the cell and says, I gotta swab you. I said, me to swab. I said, open up your mouth. I said, he's sticking that white shit in my mouth. He goes, yes, I am. And I said, well, let me tell you something about sitting on a ton of money, fool. Sitting on a ton of money. Ton of money doesn't go anywhere unless you know how to use it under program, service, and activity. Instead, they waste their money confining you to a cell or doing time. Well, the attorneys live fat off of your time. Instead of putting us into college and schools and reforming us to society, we make us into food. Just like little Boise would say, or the boys from Compton would say, NWA is our style. We're here to protest and defend our right, just as you heard in public testimony. So on behalf of everyone in public testimony, and to the assholes who don't listen, pay attention. NWA.
Time's up. Next speaker, please. Please.
Your Representative, I don't know if you really want to say that, but what I want to say is usual. I only have 1 minute, okay, so let's get your time together. Typically, people can't keep nothing together, so now you don't have my time correcting you.
All right, let's stop. Okay. Wait, hold on. 1 minute.
Yes, you can.
Well, there you go. 1 minute.
Okay, now we'll be cool. Now, when I listen to your probation department, your Mickey Mouse auditor, the guy can't run money. Your probation department has allowed 1.2 million people to be illegally prosecuted by the DA for misdemeanors committed in the city of LA. Stupid people. She's going to jail. Did anybody watch the CNN special the other night on stress? Well, damn, you better watch it, because in 5 days I had 2 people call me with suicides caused by your friends. Now, it's about time you start taking care of our youth, because 150,000 at LA Unified don't come to school every day. I gave you the spreadsheet that included other school districts. Until you get those kids out of school and you get rid of Dr. Sharon and his criminal gang, you're going to have trouble.
Next speaker, please.
Yes, so this is for Peter P. Did you see the mighty has returned again, cannot be seen on screen?
Make sure the pig stays on point.
Yes, yes. We are finding out that our Scotty family has been hoarding money like pigs. Yes, they have not been spending it in the community every year. 30 million, 30 million, 30 million. Yes, they've been hoarding it. Where have they been putting it? They tried to hoard it, pack it, stack it, steal it, and take it away to China. But China's found the money. Sight. Yes, that's right, sight. So now you are all nervous, scared. Including Mary Wickham is out of her mind. How did Janice Hahn find a secret slush fund? Because Janice Hahn was trained in Washington, D.C. under the tutelage of the great Nancy Pelosi, mastermind. Nancy Pelosi is my savior.
Stay on the item, Mr. Page.
Yes, I know, but this is how you find stolen and secret money funds. You came back here to deliver us the money, hundreds of millions of dollars that Janice Hahn would find. Hilda Solis found another 100 million.
What would happen?
Well, she decided to play ball with my President Thomas, so she hid the money. But now, today is a new day. We will release $30 million, and we will have Starbucks gift cards and all kinds of gift cards airdropped into the 4th and 5th district only. Because Catherine Parger got in on this. The rest of you, no money for you. Support the motion, and God bless the home. Thank you.
I guess we all need to sit back. I want to say in '92, right after the riots, we started taking actively at the sheriff department. And at that time, the DOJ was funding us to of good programs out there, and I want to see that it still continues. Thomas had it right. This money should have been gone. You guys have agencies within the county that have good programs that they just need to be funded. So after 92, you figure after the riots, the parents needed child care, juvenile protection, things like that. But what we want to emphasize on teaching kids how to read, how to fill out job applications, how to apply themselves for jobs so that they can stay out of trouble. Ron Boyd, or Chief Ron Boyd, had a lot to do with it with the Black Association. We taught the kids how to read, how to apply for a job and things like that, and we took the kids out on outings. So I think within this organization that you guys have a good leeway, and I think you guys need to share youth activity a little bit more so the kids can be educated in training or vocational skills and stuff like that. I am the Red Chief Hunt. If there's a problem, there's a solution. Let's work on the solution. Thank you, Mark. A great speech and things like that. Get rid of the money.
Thank you.
We need it, sir.
Thank you. Supervisor Sewell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to everyone who testified, which I know the authors will say when they close, but I wanted to indicate a couple of things. One is I intend to vote for the motion. I think it is needed, but I think there's more going on even than just what's going on here at the board. And I think it's a very good thing, because people used to talk about a new wind blowing or something changing direction, using kind of sailing terms. And I think it's really appropriate here, because the advocates who spoke here have been working for decades to try to get the attention of those in charge, to shift the focus from incarceration and punishment to rehabilitation and services. And I know that they've been trying for decades. The interesting thing in this particular decade is people are starting to listen, and it's really making a difference. This board often tries, but doesn't get all the way there, to turn a very, very big ship around. But we've been pretty united in talking about new ways of working with and trying to help all of our clients. One of the interesting things to me is I had a conversation with the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Markell, the other day, who indicated that in the agency, the Health and Human Services Agency, is going to be a new section. That new section is juvenile justice. It will move from corrections to Health and Human Services.
Oh, really?
So I talked to my sister, the presiding judge of the juvenile court in Sacramento, who has exactly the same thought about what is needed for young people who have crossed the law or erred or all of the things that we've seen. And she's in complete agreement that this is not an issue that is solved by incarceration and punishment and law enforcement. Nothing against probation, who is doing the job that the state has given them to do so far. But my opinion is too much money runs through probation. And not because they've done something wrong, but because the whole attitude in the state and the nation has been, let's do it that way when we deal with juveniles instead of through health or social services. So I think being part of that change is a very important thing. This is, someone would say, a small step. I don't know if it's so small, but I certainly support it. Thank you for bringing the motion.
Thank you. And I do want to thank everyone who came down to testify. And again, we certainly do, thank our probation department and know the challenges and the difficulty they have every day in doing their job. But I think that it's sort of the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And $30 million annually, it seems like an ounce to me, but it is an ounce that needs to be spent. And while we are going to have possibly new resources at the state level. I think, as Supervisor Solis and I found out when we did go up to Sacramento to meet with our LA County delegation, they were concerned, and they weren't all too keen on sending more money our way until they were convinced that the money that we already were allocated was being spent in a way that makes a difference. And we believe this money can make a difference. We believe that prevention and intervention dollars are key to sort of getting our young people early and preventing them from becoming a part of our system. So I think you heard it loud and clear from this board that we want a few answers, and we hope this report back will give us that. And this is something that I think we're all paying attention to. Supervisor Solis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot's been said. I too want to thank the audience and the public speakers that came out today, because it is important. This story has to be told again and again and again, unfortunately. But we have to find a way now to fast forward and allow for this free flow of information and knowledge to permeate not just probation, but some of our other departments as well. I can't wait to have the discussion about how we get WEDACs involved in terms of expanding our year-round programs targeted at these at-risk individuals, giving them paid mentoring and internships, job opportunities that could really scale up and help prevent many of the stories that we heard about the horrors that go on in our community. I think every department that touches the lives, just like Health and Human Services in Sacramento now, all of our agencies that have anything to do with our young people, Parks and Rec, as we know, others, have to really step up and look at things in a different way. And it isn't just about containing people in a certain circle, it's about expanding their also experience and allowing for some of that knowledge that we know that some of the young people here today testify to, that we ought to be sharing that. And I certainly would like to see us move quickly on the disbursement of these funds to legitimate organizations, but also to provide a lot more technical assistance to some of these groups who want to take this on, the Liberty Project, they want to help us, but the capacity in and of itself has to be 10 times. I can't even begin to tell you what I see in my own district, where the infrastructure is non-existent. And I just hope that we can move in that direction. I think the board is supportive, and I hope that we can do that. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, item 14 is now before us. Moved by Supervisor Hahn, seconded by Supervisor Markley Thomas to approve this item. If there are no objections to a unanimous vote, seeing none, that will be the order. Now.